welcome to this class. We're going to paint this orchid flower, and I purposely chose white orchid instead of like bright violet-like or pink one because I have painted those before, and it's just much easier to work with colors, like the actual colors, versus recreate something that's white. And something my mom has taught me is about that white in nature. There's no true white in nature. That's what she always told me. And at first I couldn't understand it. And this was like years ago when I first started teaching. It's because everything is affected by light and shadows. So yes, this is like bright white paper. But when you look at flowers, white flowers in nature, they are affected by light and shadows. And that's why like we as artists, we need to use colors to recreate that white, because otherwise, like, why do I need to use any color? There's my sketch, there's the orchid flower, right? I don't have to do anything. No, we do have to use colors to recreate the petals so it looks natural. So these petals, when you take a look at them, they're more like blue-gray, right? But there's some areas that felt more yellow-gray, so like over here. So that's when I added more of the yellow to that blend. And then this is actually more like a red-gray here. This is more like a yellow-gray. So before I begin painting, I studied the reference and I tried to come up with the colors, but this is white, so I knew immediately I'm just going to work with primary colors. Also to make things easier, because I know that colors, they can be so confusing when I use like 10 colors or 15, I get it. And I try my best to limit the color palette. So the first thing is to have your colors on the palette. You want to have them pre-diluted with water. Actually, I don't need this one either because I already have plenty. So this is my imidazzle yellow. So I'm just gonna dilute it. And ideally to consistency, what I call heavy cream-like ratio between water and paint, or go to my Quinn Red. Same thing. The thing is that we're gonna move some of the yellow Quinn Red closer to the, or somewhere in the middle where we have also here cobalt blue, because we're gonna start creating our own shades of gray. And this is my cobalt blue. So you don't want too much water. That's why I say heavy cream-like ratio, because if you dilute the paint too much with water, then it doesn't make sense when you paint wet on wet, because we're going to wet the petal, each petal first, and then we're going to add colors wet on wet. So you want to have control. So I'm going to move some of this yellow. So there's my imidazzle yellow. I'm going to clean this and then grab some of this Quinn Red. So parts of it, the paint, I actually want it to be very thick. So I'm just going to create another space here, or spot. This is another spot for my ISO yellow, or imidazzle yellow. And then there's Quinn Red, thicker. I'm trying to grab heavy cream. And then a little thicker of this cobalt blue. I'm sorry, cobalt blue. So I want this to be thicker here, because I'm going to use different ratios. But here, I'm moving this cobalt blue, and when you mix these, you create different shades of gray, right? So I don't need to do too much right now. So I'm going to use my long quill brush. This is a softer brush, and this is size 2, Songbird series, and I'm going to start wetting the petal. So I'm wetting it, and once I get closer towards like these edges, I'm going to probably switch to a smaller brush so I have a little more control. My palette here, so the brush is slightly wet, right? And this is the left petal, so the main shadow is like right here, and then I have a little bit of that too, but this needs to be a little more bluish, so I'm grabbing some more of the blue. These are my primaries, right? But I want this to be a little more bluish. And then once you place the color, like you see like what else you need. I need a little more of the cobalt blue with the mix. And I do want the separation of colors to happen as well. And then this is like the main shadow right there. I'm almost scared to have my test version next to me, because every time I do, it's like I try to match so hard to it, and I don't know why I do that. It's like, I feel like the test pieces are usually my better ones. So I want this to be a little more bluish, so I'm just grabbing, I still have the yellow and the red, right? but I'm grabbing also like more of the blue to show more of the blue. And this is wet on wet, and I try to grab like a heavy cream-like ratio, but the paint just gets diluted more and more with water. I want some of this gray to be more yellow gray, so now I'm grabbing a little more of the yellow because this is the area that's more like yellowish. It's a gray, but it's a yellow gray. So I'm placing more of the color here, and I'm actually going to grab even more of it and go inside here, this piece. Just using the tip of my brush. So let's say you're using the same brush. If you don't feel comfortable, you can always switch to a different brush. I just grab a little more yellow, maybe too much yellow. But you can grab a different brush just to feel more comfortable. And then here, I have a little bit of that here. And another thing I did in my test piece was, which I wasn't planning on, I lifted colors. And that kind of looked pretty. Now I'll show you this, of course, as well. So this is more like the blue-gray. More of a blue-gray, and I'm just trying to paint with the tip of my brush here. There you go. Because this part right here, this side, is more shadowed. Now I want more of the blue because these parts right here, I keep going over it. I guess it's just one of those days. But these parts right here, like you can feel like that shadow there, right? So I just grab a little more of the red and yellow. So it's kind of just a blue-gray, typical blue-gray. And then just keep going over there to add some more color and more color. Maybe some more of the yellow to make it a little more yellow-gray. But this part right here is the darkest part of that petal right there. There you go, and then get a little closer to these edges. And here as well. Perfect. So the most important is to make sure we don't lose the light. So there's a lot of areas that just need to stay paper, not paper white, but just lighter, like over here, for example. So I just grabbed more of the yellow. So this is more like the yellow gray again. And I'm still working with the same brush, but you can definitely switch to something, let's say you feel more comfortable with. This is the yellow gray, and this is just the tip of my brush, releasing more of that paint. I can grab more of that, I want to say almost violet, because I have this red here, and then mostly it looks like it's a red and the blue, but I do have some of the yellow in there too. So this, like when you add these lines here, you have to be very careful because it's easy to lose that area there. And then back in here, so as you see, like I keep going back and forth to those same areas. So I think I'm gonna grab a little more and just call it done. But this time I'm trying to grab like a really heavier paint. Just so this is a little darker there overall. Yeah, I think that's pretty good. So I'm gonna leave it. So the process is going to be the same. We're going to wet it and then apply colors wet and wet. So this one right here, it seems like the shadow is really much darker actually in here, and this one I made it a little darker overall. I think it will all balance out after all. It's just that I want to make sure that I have these shadows here and then keep lots of light in this area here. So first thing is to wet the paper in the clean water. So there's my test piece here. So this is how I lift the colors. I can't put it too low because then it will touch the painting of this journal that I'm holding. But you can see, I think, even if it's a little out of focus where I lifted the colors. So I'm gonna do the same thing here. Clean my brush, wipe on a towel. I'm gonna grab a little bit of cobalt blue. Here's my cobalt blue. I need more of that water and paint. There you go. So this is cobalt blue and some of the Quin red. And I do see that a little bit here. So the middle section there, and then over here a little bit. And then we can add this shade right in here. That's the darker part. We need more of that. And the same thing here. So I know now it looks a little weird, but we're gonna fix it by polishing it, just like we did it before. Here I'm gonna release the paint on this side a little more. And then we're gonna lift the colors. So now I'm gonna go through it just with the same size 2 brush. Smooth it, make it smooth. There you go. So we just added a little bit of that. I'd like to grab a little more of the phthalo blue with that sap green and just add it here. Just a little bit. There you go. Now I'm gonna clean the brush, wipe it on a towel, so you get used to that idea of wetting a smaller section first and then applying colors wet and wet. So this is for all my students that are used to more detailed work. I was thinking about you and I wanted to do something like this first so you're not too intimidated. And that's it, my friends. So this is our orchid flower, and I'm gonna probably finish this one just so I have an example and you can decide which one you like better. This is a little lighter, and also the petals are much larger here. I'm gonna put this on the side so you can see both of these paintings at once. So again, like this was my test piece and the petals are much larger, and I generally just recommend to paint larger in any way because you have more room to apply the colors and it just feels better. It's just more freedom with those brush strokes instead of like working on these small pieces like I did over here. So this was kind of like really time consuming and tiring. But if you keep things lighter, then this is what it's gonna look like too. I like both versions, but I think this is my favorite even though it's not finished yet. So please let me know if you have any questions, and enjoy the process of painting these petals.